Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as another ship landed outside his repair bay on Kepler Station. The Outer Rim mining colony wasn't much to look at, but it kept him busy fixing everything from cargo haulers to military patrol craft. Being the only human mechanic this far out meant steady work, even if the pay wasn't great. The afternoon alarm chimed, signaling another emergency landing. Marcus grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the landing pad, expecting another routine repair job. What he found instead made him stop dead in his tracks. A sleek silver ship had crash-landed hard, leaving deep gouges in the metal plating. But that wasn't what caught his attention. Limping away from the wreckage was something he'd only seen in old Earth documentaries. A massive albino leopard, easily twice the size of any cat from Earth's records. The creature's pure white fur was stained with blood, and its left hind leg bent at an unnatural angle. Those pale blue eyes, almost transparent, fixed on Marcus with a mixture of pain and wariness. The leopard's breathing came in short, labored gasps. Marcus had seen plenty of strange alien species during his 5 years on Kepler Station, but nothing quite like this. The leopard's muscular frame suggested it was built for speed and power, yet something about its posture seemed almost intelligent, too intelligent for a simple animal. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus said softly, setting down his toolkit slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The leopard's ears flicked back, a low growl rumbling from its throat. But it didn't run. Maybe it couldn't run, not with that leg. Marcus could see bone fragments poking through the white fur and dark blood pooling beneath the injured limb. Most people would have called station security. Protocol demanded it, actually. Unknown alien fauna were supposed to be contained and studied, not treated like injured pets. But Marcus had always been terrible at following protocol. He'd spent his childhood helping his veterinarian mother back on Earth, learning to read animal behavior and treat injuries. This leopard was suffering, and Marcus couldn't just walk away. "Your ship's totaled," he said, gesturing toward the wreckage. "But that leg, that I might be able to help with." The leopard's head tilted slightly, as if considering his words. Those pale eyes seemed to study Marcus with an unsettling intelligence. Then slowly, the great cat lowered itself to the ground, never breaking eye contact. Marcus approached carefully, his hands visible and moving slowly. The leopard tensed, but didn't flee. Up close, he could see the full extent of the damage. The fracture was clean but severe, definitely requiring surgery to heal properly. "This is going to hurt," Marcus warned, though he doubted the creature understood him. "But if we don't set this bone, you'll never walk right again." Working by instinct and half-remembered lessons from his mother's clinic, Marcus began to clean the wound. The leopard hissed and snarled but didn't try to bite him. Its claws, easily 6 inches long, remained sheathed. Hour by hour, Marcus worked. He used his ship repair tools to fashion a splint, drawing on his knowledge of both mechanical engineering and basic veterinary care. The leopard watched his every move, occasionally rumbling deep in its chest when the pain became too much. As the station's artificial sun set, casting long shadows across the landing pad, Marcus finally finished. The leopard's leg was properly set and bandaged, though recovery would take weeks. "There," Marcus said, sitting back on his heels. "That should hold, but you need to stay off it for a while." The leopard struggled to its feet, testing the weight on its injured leg. It took a tentative step, then another. The limp was pronounced, but the bone held. Those pale blue eyes met Marcus's again, and for a moment, he could have sworn he saw something like gratitude in them. The leopard moved closer, close enough that Marcus could feel its breath on his face. Then, unexpectedly, it pressed its massive head against Marcus's chest in what could only be described as a thank you. "You're welcome," Marcus whispered, running his hand through the soft white fur. The leopard pulled back, gave Marcus one last long look, then limped away into the maze of storage containers and maintenance buildings that surrounded the landing pad. Within minutes, it had vanished completely. Marcus packed up his tools, wondering if he'd ever see the strange creature again. He had no idea that he'd just saved the life of something far more important than he could possibly imagine. The next morning brought new ships to repair and new problems to solve. But Marcus found himself glancing toward the shadows between buildings, looking for a glimpse of white fur and pale blue eyes. The albino leopard had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving only questions behind. 3 weeks passed without any sign of the albino leopard. Marcus had almost convinced himself the entire encounter was some kind of stress-induced hallucination when Station Commander Walsh summoned him to the main administrative complex. "Chen, we need to talk," Walsh said, his weathered face grim. "There have been reports of unusual activity in the outer storage sectors. Maintenance crews are finding their food supplies missing, and yesterday someone spotted a large white animal near the water recycling plant." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Could be anything, sir. Lots of scavengers on stations like this." This wasn't a scavenger. Walsh pulled up a security feed on his screen. The image was grainy, but it clearly showed a massive white shape moving between containers. "This thing is huge, and according to xenobiology protocols, we need to capture it for study." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Capture it? Dr. Harrison from the research division is flying in tomorrow with a containment team. Whatever this thing is, it doesn't belong here. Could be dangerous." Walsh leaned back in his chair. "I'm assigning you to help guide them through the station layout. You know these maintenance areas better than anyone." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those intelligent blue eyes, the way the leopard had pressed its head against his chest. The creature had trusted him, and now he was supposed to help trap it. Around midnight, he made his decision. Grabbing a med kit and some emergency rations, Marcus headed for the outer storage sectors. If the leopard was still hurt, still hiding, maybe he could convince it to leave before the research team arrived. The storage area was a maze of towering containers and pipes, dimly lit by emergency lighting. Marcus moved quietly, listening for any sound that might indicate the leopard's presence. After an hour of searching, he was ready to give up when he heard a soft whimper from behind a cluster of water barrels. There, curled up in a makeshift den of salvaged blankets and metal sheets, was the albino leopard. Its leg had healed, but Marcus could see fresh scratches along its flanks. The creature looked thinner than before, and those pale eyes held a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Hey there," Marcus whispered, crouching down slowly. "Remember me?" The leopard's head lifted and its ears perked forward. A low rumble came from its throat, but this time it sounded almost like a purr. The creature struggled to its feet, favoring the previously injured leg but moving much better than before. "You need to leave this place," Marcus said urgently. "There are people coming tomorrow who want to lock you up, study you. I won't let that happen." The leopard approached him cautiously, sniffing at the med kit and food rations. When Marcus opened one of the ration packs, the creature's eyes widened and it began eating with desperate hunger. "How long since you've had real food?" Marcus asked softly. "You can't keep living like this." As the leopard ate, Marcus examined its injured leg more closely. The bone had healed well, though there was a slight limp that would probably be permanent. The scratches on its sides looked like they came from squeezing through tight spaces. "Probably searching for food. There's a cargo ship leaving for the Vega system tomorrow night," Marcus said, though he felt foolish talking to what was essentially a wild animal. "No questions asked, no cargo manifests. If you could somehow get aboard." The leopard finished eating and looked at Marcus with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Then it did something that made Marcus's blood run cold. It touched his arm with one massive paw and pointed toward the station's central hub with its nose. Animals didn't point. Animals didn't make deliberate gestures to communicate complex ideas. Whatever this creature was, it was far more than it appeared. "You understand me, don't you?" Marcus whispered. "You're not just some lost animal." The leopard's response was to touch Marcus's chest gently with its paw, then bow its head in what looked unmistakably like gratitude. Then it limped deeper into the storage maze, vanishing once again into the shadows. Marcus sat there for a long time, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. Tomorrow he would have to guide Dr. Harrison's team through these same passages, knowing they were hunting something that was clearly more than a simple beast. But he'd also planted a seed of an idea. The cargo ship to Vega would be loading supplies all day tomorrow. If a clever creature wanted to slip aboard unseen, there would be opportunities. As Marcus headed back to his quarters, he found himself hoping that pale blue eyes were watching from the darkness, planning an escape. Because something told him that capturing this leopard would be a mistake humanity might regret for a very long time. The alien being that Marcus had known as an injured leopard now stood with the bearing of royalty. Through the caller's translation, they learned that their guest was Ambassador Cathara of the Villani Empire, a civilization that had been observing human expansion into space for over a century. "Your species interests us," Cathara explained, their pale blue eyes never leaving Marcus. "You are young, aggressive, and unpredictable. Most galactic civilizations maintain careful distance from developing species until they prove themselves worthy of contact." Commander Walsh had arrived in the research bay, along with his senior staff, all looking pale and shaken by the alien fleet surrounding their station. "Ambassador," Walsh said carefully, "we had no idea of your true nature. We thought you were simply an injured animal." "I know," Cathara replied, amusement coloring their translated words. "My ship suffered critical failure during a routine observation mission. I was forced to take emergency refuge on your station in my natural form." They gestured to their feline body. "My people evolved from predators much as your species evolved from primates." Dr. Harrison stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "The genetic modifications, the enhanced physical capabilities, evolutionary adaptations enhanced by our technology," Cathara explained. "We have had many millennia to perfect our forms, but no amount of enhancement could repair the damage to my leg from the crash. I faced death until," they turned to Marcus, "until this one chose compassion over fear." Marcus felt dozens of eyes on him as Cathara continued. "I observed this station for weeks after the crash, learning your customs and evaluating your species. Most of your people followed protocols, maintaining safe distances from unknown threats, logical but predictable. But Marcus didn't," Walsh said, beginning to understand. "No, he did not." Cathara moved closer to Marcus, their massive frame moving with fluid grace. "When faced with suffering, he chose to help despite personal risk. When I was hunted, he warned me. When I was captured, he worked to free me. Such behavior is rare." The implications of those words hung heavy in the air. How many species had the Villani observed? How many had failed whatever test this represented? "Ambassador," Marcus said quietly, "what happens now?" Cathara was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see lights flickering along their collar as they communicated with the fleet above. "That depends entirely on your species' next choices," they finally said. Through the viewport, more alien ships continued to arrive. The Villani fleet now numbered in the hundreds, their liquid metal hulls reflecting the light of Kepler's distant sun. Yet, despite their overwhelming numbers, they hadn't fired a single shot. "The Galactic Collective has protocols for first contact," Cathara explained. "Species that demonstrate wisdom, compassion, and the ability to look beyond their own immediate interests are welcomed as junior members. Those that prove themselves violent, selfish, or irredeemably aggressive are—" They paused. "Contained. Contained how?" Walsh asked, though his expression suggested he didn't want to know the answer. "Their expansion into space is halted. Their colonies are isolated. They are left to their home systems until they mature enough for peaceful contact, which sometimes takes millennia." The research bay fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the distant sound of the station's life support systems. Everyone understood the weight of this moment. Humanity's future among the stars hung in the balance. "What exactly are you evaluating?" Dr. Harrison asked. "How your species responds to the situation," Cathara replied. "Do you immediately reach for weapons? Do you attempt to take me hostage? Do you try to steal our technology? Or do you choose a different path?" Marcus realized that every person in the room was holding their breath. This wasn't just first contact, it was humanity's final exam for entry into galactic civilization. "Permission to speak freely?" Marcus asked Commander Walsh. Walsh nodded, his usual military bearing cracking under the pressure of the situation. Marcus turned to Cathara. "You saved my life once, didn't you? In the storage sectors, when your people could have simply destroyed the station to retrieve you. You told them to wait, to give us a chance. How did you know?" Cathara asked. "Because you're not just testing our species. You're advocating for us." Marcus gestured toward the fleet. "All those ships could have been here in minutes, but you made them wait. You wanted to give humanity every possible chance to prove ourselves worthy." Cathara's alien features shifted in what might have been a smile. "Perceptive. Yes, I argued for patience. I told the fleet command that at least one human had shown promise. They agreed to delay judgment until proper evaluation could be completed. And if we fail this evaluation? Walsh asked. Then your colonies beyond this system will be quarantined within the week, Kithara said simply. Your expansion into space will end here today. Marcus felt the weight of his species' future pressing down on him. Everything that happened in the next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community or found itself trapped in isolation for potentially thousands of years. What do we need to do? He asked. Show me, Kithara said, that the compassion you demonstrated in a moment of crisis represents something larger about your species. Show me that humans can choose cooperation over conquest, understanding over fear. As if summoned by their words, more alarms began sounding throughout the station. But this time the threat wasn't from above, it was coming from within. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood at attention in the base theater as Colonel Thompson read the citation for her Distinguished Flying Cross. The entire wing had assembled to witness the ceremony, along with special guests who had flown in specifically for the event. Among them were the 3 SEALs she had rescued, now recovered from their injuries and eager to meet the pilot who had refused to abandon them. For extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight, Colonel Thompson read in his formal voice, Captain Sarah Mitchell displayed exceptional courage, superior airmanship, and unwavering dedication to the rescue of fellow service members under the most hazardous conditions. Her actions reflect the highest credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. The medal felt heavy in Sarah's hands as she accepted it, but not as heavy as the knowledge that 3 families still had their loved ones, because she had chosen to attempt the impossible. The ceremony was nice, but the real reward had come in the hospital ward where she met the men she had saved. Staff Sergeant Mike "Tank" Williams had been the most seriously wounded of the 3 SEALs. A piece of shrapnel from the helicopter crash had punctured his lung, and he had been slowly drowning in his own blood when Sarah's attack provided the cover needed for his rescue. When she visited him in the hospital, he could barely speak but managed to whisper, "Thank you," with tears in his eyes. Petty Officer First Class David Ghost. Martinez had suffered a broken leg and multiple lacerations but remained conscious throughout the ordeal. He told Sarah how they had heard her aircraft approaching and knew immediately that someone was coming for them. "We thought we were dead," he said. "Then we heard that beautiful sound of an A-10 and knew the cavalry had arrived." Chief Petty Officer James Bulldog Harrison, the team leader, had maintained radio contact with headquarters throughout their ordeal. He provided Sarah with a tactical perspective on her attack that she found both humbling and educational. "You hit every position we identified as a threat," he explained. "But more than that, you kept them so focused on you that they couldn't coordinate an effective response. That's what saved us." After the ceremony, Commander Rodriguez approached Sarah with something that looked like embarrassment on his weathered features. "Captain, I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I told you that mission was impossible and I was wrong. More importantly, I almost let 3 good men die because I couldn't see past conventional thinking." Sarah shook her head. "You were protecting your people and mine. That's what good commanders do. The mission was impossible using conventional tactics. It just turned out that unconventional tactics were exactly what we needed." The real validation came from an unexpected source. Word of Sarah's mission had reached the Pentagon, where senior officers were studying her tactics for potential inclusion in pilot training programs. The canyon flying techniques she had developed were being analyzed by flight test engineers who wanted to understand how she had accomplished what computer simulations said was impossible. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the helicopter pilot who had followed Sarah through the canyon, had been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross as well. During the reception following the ceremony, she pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "I've been flying for 8 years," she said, "and I've never seen anything like what you did in that canyon. You didn't just complete an impossible mission. You made it look routine." Chief Patterson had submitted a detailed maintenance report on Sarah's aircraft that read like a miracle study. The A-10 had absorbed damage that should have brought it down, continued flying with multiple system failures, and delivered its pilot safely home. "That aircraft will never fly again," he told Sarah, but it completed its final mission perfectly. The rescued SEALs had requested a private meeting with Sarah before they returned to their unit. They gathered in a small conference room at the hospital, still wearing bandages but insisting on standing when she entered. Tank Williams, now breathing normally but still weak, served as their spokesman. "Ma'am, we know that medal is nice and all, but we wanted to give you something more personal." He handed her a small wooden plaque with the seal trident carved into it. "This is made from wood taken from the helicopter that crashed. Our buddy who didn't make it would have wanted you to have this." Sarah felt tears threatening as she accepted the simple but meaningful gift. She had known there was a fourth SEAL who died in the initial crash, but the survivors had never spoken about their fallen teammate. The weight of the plaque seemed to encompass both the loss they had suffered and the lives she had saved. His name was Petty Officer Second Class Tony Rodriguez, Ghost Martinez added. "Lisa's little brother. She doesn't know we had this made, but we figured you should know why she was so determined to get us out of there." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Captain Rodriguez had flown into that canyon knowing her brother was already dead, risking her own life to save his teammates. The courage that had taken was beyond anything Sarah had considered during the mission planning. As the ceremony wound down and people began to disperse, Sarah found herself standing alone on the flight, lying near the aircraft that had replaced her damaged A-10. The new plane was identical in specifications but lacked the character that came from combat experience. Her old aircraft was being prepared for shipment to the Air Force Museum, where it would serve as a reminder of what was possible when people refused to accept limitations. Colonel Thompson joined her as she stared at the new aircraft. "Penny for your thoughts, Captain?" Sarah smiled at the informal tone from her usually stern commander. "Just thinking about how many times we're told something can't be done. Usually by people who haven't really tried to find a way to do it. The Pentagon wants to interview you about developing new tactical procedures," he said. "They're calling it the Mitchell method, and they want to teach it to other pilots. Are you interested?" Sarah considered the offer. Teaching other pilots to push beyond conventional limitations could save more lives in future missions. But she also knew that every situation was unique, requiring adaptation rather than rigid adherence to procedures. As long as they understand that tactics are just tools, the real key is refusing to give up when lives are on the line. As they walked back toward the squadron building, Thompson shared one final piece of information. "I got a call from the Chief of Staff yesterday. He wanted me to tell you that your mission has been classified as a case study in innovative tactics under pressure. Future A-10 pilots will learn about what you did in that canyon." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and responsibility at the news. Young pilots would study her mission, and some might attempt similar feats in future conflicts. She hoped they would understand that the technical aspects were less important than the underlying principle. When people need help, you find a way to provide it regardless of what others say is possible. The impossible mission was over, but its legacy would continue every time a pilot chose to attempt the difficult rather than accept the impossible. Sarah had proven that with enough determination, skill, and courage, even the SEAL's impossible could become possible.